I want to talk about two things that are really about health, but I want to talk about the actual technology that's being used for the smart meters and the thing that concerns us about it, and then talk about the politics of what to do as directly as possible. The smart meter is a piece of a broader program, national program, to implement what's called a smart grid. Smart grid is not intended to, as sometimes advertised, to lower our carbon footprint or to conserve energy. It is intended to lower the requirement for adding new facilities to the electric power, what's called the electric power grid. The electricity, when we turn on lights anywhere, pulls electricity off of a bunch of wires that we can see all around, and that energy can be produced someplace that's very close or very far away. When everyone on the hottest day on August 25th turns on their air conditioner, it creates a huge demand so that the utilities, which have to provide the energy, have to build those plants. But they don't use them most of the time. The only times they use them is at those what's called peak load. So the problem that's being solved by this is not a conservation problem. It is not a carbon footprint problem. It is a financial problem for the utilities that produce electricity. And the piece that the smart meters play in this scheme is it will enable the utilities to control how you consume energy so that their load can be balanced, so that they don't get peaks, there are sudden peaks, blackouts, brownouts, those sorts of things. So you will have a device on the side of people will have a device on the side of their house that gives PG&E and other utilities access to your home and what is going on in your home. Right now, a human being comes out and looks at the dials that are on the meter that's on the side of your house, typically once a month. The smart meter will enable what's called time of day metering. That is, the utility will be able to tell what time of day you're using electricity. And during those times of day when a lot of people are using electricity, they will be able to charge you more for that electricity than otherwise. You supposedly will read that signal and decide not to turn on your air conditioner when you get home from work, or to replace your refrigerator, or some other nonsense story that they have. But the essence of the smart meter is that it's the gateway for the utility into your house. Now, the smart meter can be implemented in several ways. Originally, I just found this out recently, when PG&E first proposed using smart meter, the method that they proposed for transmitting that information from your house to PG&E headquarters was to use the existing electrical lines to send the data over that. And that's a technology it's actually a very bad technology that's being promoted because it's being promoted because the wires are already there. Signals can be carried along those wires from a home to some central place. Actually, I don't know the details of why that was rejected, but ultimately PG&E decided that it was economically not feasible to do that, or technically not feasible to do that. They would not be able to carry the amount of information. What they switched to was they planned to use radio frequency radiation antennas mounted on the meters themselves to transmit that information. I'm going to go into a bit about how that works, because therein lies a good deal of the danger. I want to skip over and talk about what everyone technically agrees technically is the desirable method for implementing a smart meter, that is establishing communication, and that's what's called fiber optic to the home. Fiber optic is literally that. It's glass wire that carries visible light that technical people could tell you much more than I can about it, but essentially the amount of information and the speed with which can be carried is vastly greater than using radio frequency signals and antennas. PG&E has rejected this because they say it costs too much. This, in fact, is nonsense, because there are many internet service providers, such as Google, and up where I live in Sonoma County, Sonic.net, which has plans to hook up houses using fiber optic to the home. In any event, 5 years ago, when PG&E was going through this and switched to RF-based signaling communication with smart meters, it was purely an economic decision. It's cheap, and it is built on the idea of what is called a mesh network. A mesh network is, if you understand the concept of a local area network or a network in your house, if you have computer services where a wire comes out of a modem and goes to your computers, you have a network, goes to multiple computers, you have a network. There are wireless modems which emit radio frequency radiation, which can connect computers. And essentially what the mesh network is, it's a big, vast wireless network that goes through neighborhoods, cities, across the state, that connects from your meter to PG&E headquarters using radio frequency signals. The reason this is particularly dangerous is that the PG&E and none of the technologists, because no such network has ever been installed, no one knows how much exposure people are actually going to be subject to. The exposure statistics that PG&E has come up with have been what people will be exposed to with a single meter, which is bad enough. But once an entire neighborhood or entire city is wired up, many people are estimating that the actual exposure that some people will be subject to will be astronomical, orders of magnitude greater than a single meter, because meters become transit stations for signals. The meter on your house could be the way station for the 20 homes around your home. So the information comes from their home, comes to your meter, and gets passed on to signaling devices elsewhere and gets sent on to PG&E headquarters. So the danger here is not just from the radio frequency exposures from individual meters, it's once this whole network gets fired up, what people are going to be exposed to. So there's virtually nothing known about how that works, about what the exposures are actually going to be. There's, like I said, estimates that these exposures could be are likely to be far greater than anyone's estimating. And one of the fig leaves that PG&E hides behind with regard to this issue is that whenever the issue of health effects is brought up, the PG&E says that it can't really address that problem because that's something that's governed by the Federal Communications Commission. This is a false claim because the Federal Communications Commission does not have any standards for long-term exposures of these kinds. The kinds that you're going to be long-term low-grade exposures such as those coming from these meters. So there has been an application filed by the EMF Safety Network, which is at the website emfsafetynetwork.org, which is, as far as I know, the most active group on this issue so far. Take down this number. The application number for this that they have made to the Public Utilities Commission is 10-04-018. That application is asking for a reversal of the original application made by PG&E before the PUC, and it asks for fundamentally two things: a moratorium to investigate the environmental health, safety, security, and performance risks associated with the use of smart meters, and asks that the CPUC implement an opt-out option. What the opt-out option means is that if you don't want one of these things on the side of your house, they can't make you. Right now, if you call the number that support from PG&E, you will get someone who will actually get hostile with you if you express a desire not to have one of these things on your house. So the important thing for you to do is to write a letter to CPUC that there is in support of that application. There's a petition. Sign that petition that has many of the elements in it that the application before the CPUC has. And I also want you, most importantly, to get in contact with the office of Dean Flores in the State Senate and Mark Leno, who is your senator, who is on the subcommittee, the Senate Select Subcommittee for Smart Grid Technology, and tell them that you want legislative action that enables people to opt out. They're already moving forward with this moratorium issue. They're talking specifically about that, but we have to make noise. PG&E has more money than God. What we've got is our feet and our voices, and we need to use them to keep the light on the CPUC so that things don't get done in the back room. As a political economist, we study a phenomenon that is called regulatory capture. It is exactly what you think it is. However nice those people may be, regulatory agencies become the captive of the industries they're intended to regulate, and the only way that they stay honest and actually do the people's work is if you make noise and threaten trouble. So please do so, kind of like voting in Chicago, do it early and often. If there's enough noise and enough trouble, they'll do something. Thanks.
I mean, let me just get a show of hands. Does anybody here not understand that low-level, as they're calling it, or high-level radio frequency radiation, non-ionizing radiation, do you need me to explain that this is dangerous? How many people already are convinced that these technologies are dangerous? Yeah. Okay, so a few of you are not there.
I'm convinced, but I don't understand it.
Okay. First of all, one of the reasons that you don't understand it is because the way these toxic substances, and this is a toxic, the way these toxins are introduced into our environment, and we could, there's fluoride in the water, for God's sakes. Do you know how toxic fluoride is? Do you really know? It's a complete poison, right? So how does that happen? How do we end up with all these toxins? And now they're going to put more layers, more toxins. The way it happens is that there are these industry experts. We were going to go up against one of the worst ones at a forum in Sonoma County, and an hour before, I guess we're very formidable, an hour before the forum started, they pulled the experts, which is amazing, because we geared up for this, really. But these are people who manipulate the data and then regurgitate the data in a way, and literally throw it up in a completely, it's beyond a lack of integrity. It's just, these are people who are paid by the industry, and There are industry groups. So when you hear any piece of information from the WHO or any of these large groups, they're getting their information from industry experts that are paid by the industry to destroy credible research. I mean, the woman that we were going to go up against destroyed all of the credibility of the research on leukemia and power lines for children. And everybody knows that, okay. So the thing that's, if you know, we could go on for hours about why RF is dangerous. What Mary Beth said is important. We're used to a certain kind of electromagnetic radiation that the Earth gives out, and in fact, so are all the animals and bees and birds and all the rest of it. And this is a new layer of a different frequency, and it's delivered in a different way than we're normally used to. So it's like, you know, you can imagine you take a trip to Santa Fe, you're suddenly in 8,000 feet and you're nauseous and you're dizzy, but you can accommodate that after a while. But this is not something that we're going to genetically be able to catch up with. And when you look at the research, the problem is that, like everything else, we don't know exactly what the mechanisms are that causes DNA breaks, but we now know from repeated studies that it causes DNA breakage, which is the fast track to cancer. Do we know exactly what the mechanism is? Well, no, we don't, but we don't know any of the mechanisms for any of the cancers for sure. We don't. Nobody does, and nobody cares, because it's an industry. So there's DNA breakages, there's no amount of this radiation that's safe. Very low level radio frequency radiation or wireless radiation causes there to be, I should say, breaches in the blood-brain barrier. This is what protects your brain from toxins. So this radiation causes breaches. That means chemicals and toxins go right into your brain. So you have a concomitant reaction between sensitivity, electrosensitivity, and people with chemical sensitivities. So this is horrible for people with environmental sensitivity. So now we started with maybe 20% of the population, and it got to 30% electrosensitives. All of a sudden, all these people. Now, in this room that I went to with the people from Sebastopol, there were 300 people in the room. Almost every single person in the room was electrosensitive. They got up and described exactly the same symptoms. The dizziness, the nausea, the face flushing, the skin reactions, the depression, insomnia. I mean, it goes on. Incidentally, the sperm count and fertility rates are dropping like a rock. So here comes this new mesh network where houses are going to be antennas. They're talking about putting other things on this same system. Now, there is nothing in the bill that mandates the use of this technology that says anything about wireless. As Jeffrey said, Google and all these other companies like Sonic are coming out with, they're in a race to deliver fast broadband to you, and the fastest way is fiber optics. So what about your security? I mean, we've got the health effects. Do you need more health effects? I can just keep blood-brain barrier breaches, DNA break. I mean, I can go on and on and on, and that's low level. We're now talking about lots of it. We're talking about walls of meters on the side of an apartment complex and a baby sleeping on the other side. What do you think this does to a developing baby's brain? Children have horrible reactions to wireless. I mean, if you've got a wireless router in your house, really, think again. We can't predict how much traffic is going to be on this network. The way that it's delivered is part of the reason people are reacting. It's kind of pulse modulated. It's all kinds of things. And they're rolling this stuff out with no concern for people's privacy. So when I talk about privacy, what I'm saying is, who gets to know when you're at home, when you're not at home? Who gets to know what you're buying, what kinds of pieces of equipment you're using? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of privacy issues here, and nobody has said anything about how that's going to be protected. So is this going to be sold to other industries so that they can market to you? Is this going to be a situation where somebody can stake out your house and figure out on the basis, using their computer to figure out when you're gone on vacation so that they can break into your house? Is that what's going to happen now? Does this mean now, because this is wireless and there's no way to secure wireless, it's completely insecure. IT architects are completely freaked out about this system because it means that anybody can hack into the system, anybody can drop the grid. There's no security protocols for this, and people who are really paying attention know this for certain. So what else does that mean? Does that mean that somebody can drive by with a cell phone, make a call on a cell phone, interrupt the signal somehow, and turn on your oven in the middle of the day? I mean, this is so stupid, and it's not necessary for it to be wireless. The mandate to upgrade the grid. Incidentally, we're upgrading the grid. Why are we upgrading the grid? Oh, because of energy efficiency, because there's climate change. Suddenly, PG&E, everybody's very green. If you want a solar system, if you want an in-grid solar system, they can't give you a smart meter because they don't run backwards. So this doesn't work with solar. So one trick you can do is you put in a small in-grid solar system and you don't get a smart meter. But you know, excuse me? This doesn't work with solar? What am I missing here? So what this means is you, as citizens, look, they can't force you to use a smart meter. We have to refuse them. And so far, they don't know what they're going to do. Can they turn off a ratepayer? If you're paying your bills, can they turn your power off because you don't want a smart meter? They don't know if they're going to do that. People have called up and said, I'm not going to take it. And they go, well, okay, we'll estimate your bills. They're in trouble. Refuse the smart meter.
The solution is to get torches and pitchforks and show up and scare the hell out of these guys. Look, these institutions exist not to serve you, but to maintain social stability, so that the only way that you're going to get them to do anything is to threaten social stability. That's how it works.
You don't have to accept this. The only way that this is going to stop is with people organizing and saying no. And it does work. Thank you.